Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hey everyone, it is my pleasure to welcome as a guest to the show today, Catherine Ewing. She is the founder of Sacred Heart Alchemy. She is a transformational coach and spiritual mentor for women to release the limitations of early life trauma. She has over 30 years of experience as a trauma-informed psychotherapist, EFT practitioner, energy healer, and she's a committed student, of the mind,
Been
body,
committed.
and spirit. Yeah. Catherine facilitates deep and lasting transformation for her clients and students, and it is an absolute joy to have her today. Welcome, Catherine.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. It's my pleasure to be here.
You're
So
welcome.
excited.
Yes, the pleasure is mine as well. And I can't wait to dive into our conversation today. Catherine, I'd love for you to really just start by sharing more with us about, what inspired you to this path.
Yeah. Well, the quick answer is the kick in the ass from spirit inspired me to this
Right?
path.
You're
Because
like, well, I got
honestly,
my ass kicked. Yeah.
yeah, I got my ass kicked. Actually, it was a gentle nudge, but it was serious. I did not set out to be a psychotherapist. I do have a master's in social work, but my original work, 40-ish years ago, was more direct service to women. So I did rape crisis work, domestic violence work, child abuse, women in poverty, social and economic justice. I was a real grassroots sort of social activist, social worker. I knew nothing about therapy. I had no interest in it. I thought, back in my time, the time of Woody Allen movies, I thought it was just wealthy, white, neurotic men contemplating their belly buttons. So I was about 12 years into my social work career as I just outlined it, and I was on a maternity leave for my daughter, who's now 30. She's the youngest of my three children, and I started hearing in my mind this little message about going into private practice. And I was like, that's not happening. No. And after resisting for a while, I put some calls out and I connected with a couple of women who, when I was working for Child Protective Services in the area of child sexual abuse, we had done some joint trainings and things together, and they had their own private practice. And I ended up joining their practice. And the quick story is that I realized very quickly, both probably because my total lack of training, but also that traditional talk therapy was not getting me or my clients where we wanted to go. I just found it, especially for uh, my clients who tended to have quite a bit of trauma, they either couldn't access it because it's so deep in the subconscious, or if we did, it was re-traumatizing because it would just re-traumatize. So I knew that I had to find some different ways to work with my clients, but I was not interested in the clinical psychotherapy diagnostic path. And this is where the kick to go down the path of energy healing, metaphysics, spirituality, on my own journey of healing my own trauma, balancing my feminine and masculine energy, because I grew up with six brothers, so I got a lot of masculine energy.
Mm.
And it literally was my path. And I got trained in multiple energy healing modalities. I went through an alternative ministerial program. So I'm an ordained minister of spiritual peacemaking. I really was drawn to a very alternative path. and I kept going because everything that I was doing was wonderful, but not necessarily easily transferable into a therapy model, right? People were coming to me for therapy. So it really was in 2006 when I learned tapping EFT that I found the process, the method that was that bridge for me. It bridged talking, the sort of talk therapy aspect, and working with the energy body to heal and clear the trauma. And tapping really became my go-to modality. I still use it to this day, but it was really the bridge for me between the world of more traditional clinical therapy and um, the energy work and the sort of the metaphysical and vibrational work that I knew was needed. And of course, remember, that was in the beginning, that was in the mid to late 1990s. So long before we were talking really about trauma. You know, people like Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine and, all of the Gabor Mate, those people's work was not really out in the world yet. So I was kind of carving my own path.
Yeah, I love that. Yes. The question that's coming forward for you, I'd love to know, in my experience, I mean, I'm also a huge believer in energy healing and have my own work that I do with clients in that realm as well. I found in my experience that although as powerful as energy healing is, right, unless someone also has supporting structures set up around changing ongoing behaviors, right? They can,
Yeah.
if they don't, right, to create those new neural pathways, then they can also have like I call it a boomerang pattern, like where it keeps coming back. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. We were actually talking about this in one of my classes that I was in today. And I think a lot of it has to do with being embodied. We can
Yes.
have a healing moment, we can have an
Hmm.
aha moment, we can have a breakthrough,
Yeah.
but that isn't necessarily a long-term healing, right? And for so many people with trauma, they've developed some kind of leaving pattern or freezing pattern, fight, flight, freeze, um, and they leave their bodies. And the healing has to be in the body because we know the trauma's in the tissue, right? It affects our body chemistry, it affects our DNA, it affects our cellular memory. It's so if we're not embodied and then also don't have a safe container in which to do the work. So whether it's a safe container, just having a partner who's willing to hold space for us, or a larger community that is a safe place to drop into your own healing. Because let's face it, the people who were involved in your trauma, whether that's your family or your religion or your community, or the patriarchy, whatever it is, they don't want to hear about your healing. They don't want you to change. And so trying to do that by yourself without those different layers of support, um, I want to say, not only isn't really sustainable, but as a practitioner, therapist, energy healer, it's out of integrity for me to work with someone or suggest that they can do deep healing if those um, structures are not in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
And
Yes.
it's not a one and done. Healing is a multi-layered.
Yes.
you
To
know
that.
you, you you think you've done it all, and then you open up another layer, or there's a past life, or there's a place where your soul stepped got split away or fractured, or there are just so many layers, that people who are early on in their healing journey from very real physical, mental, emotional, sexual abuse in this
Hmm.
lifetime can't even begin to comprehend. So to
Yeah.
suggest anyone that it's a fast process I think it can be faster than 30 years on the couch. And I think the energy, especially tapping, things like that, techniques, can support um, healing to move along more quickly. But it is certainly not, you know, a fast or easy
Yeah,
process.
I agree with you. It's not a quick fix. I mean, and that comes from the societal program. You know, societal programming is very heavy around having conditioned many of us to believe that, you know, there's a magic bullet to everything, and that comes from the advertising. It's all around us, right? Media, propaganda, all of that. That being said, I believe there is a way to collapse space and time, right, for that to occur within us, with the right keys in place. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
one of those, I believe, is willingness and the acceptance that this is, to add on to what you were just talking about, in that we are actually eternal students, and coming to terms with that and accepting that, right? Knowing that there's always going to be new layers. And I believe in how we choose to frame that is really important as well, right? We can look at it as, oh, I've freaking been through this,
Yeah.
like, you know, 10
I
times, and
did
there's
this
another layer.
already. Right.
Or you can choose to look at it from from a higher perspective of, wow, okay, there's another something for me to be curious about
Yeah.
and to discover.
And that, you know, that takes time. That's part of the process. It's that shift out of a victim mentality. Things happen
Yeah,
to me. I was abused. I grew up in poverty. You know, whatever all those things are. And
yeah,
yes, absolutely, those were the circumstances, the experiences of your life. And I am not going to argue with a newer client about that. Like, I'm going to meet them right where they're at. We're going to work.
totally.
But it's over time when we can, I should just say me, when can then begin to introduce the idea that your soul may have chosen this path and that things may be happening for you, not to you. But that's a very delicate conversation. And certainly from a, you know, from a therapist perspective, making sure a client is ready to be having that kind of a conversation
Yeah,
is critical.
absolutely. What you say about meeting someone where they're at is really important. And to put into context of this conversation, right, many of the people that will be listening to this are people who have already, they're on a path, right, of
Mm-hmm.
intentionally creating their own reality and looking for additional knowledge, right, approaches and ways to become more deeply embodied, right, in
Yeah.
what we're in what we're talking about.
Yeah. And what's so beautiful now, and I sort of referenced this earlier on, what is in my work as a therapist, you know, we weren't talking about trauma, we weren't aware of all the things we know now, but we also were not talking about soul retrieval and ancestral healing and
Yes.
star family. And you know, one of the things that's not in my bio is, you know, I became activated to light language on 9909. So, you know, I also um, am a vehicle for light language to come through, which is just another way to begin to move through blocks and raise frequency and, you know, bring in attunement or
Yes.
activation from higher levels. And we have so many beautiful ways now.
Yes.
And I think it just keeps opening more and more. You know, at my chronological age and having been, you know, really on the spiritual path for 30 years or so now, you know, I feel like I was one of the heavy lifters. You know, we were picking axe on the mountain trying to move the big break the boulders up so we could move them out with the wheelbarrow, you know, like we were doing the really heavy lifting. And now I see these amazing young people coming through. They're just like whew, moving down that super highway with these incredible gifts and connections to, other realms, and maybe they're not always so grounded, or they certainly might have their own trauma to work through because they don't feel like they quite fit in this world. But when I see how we paved the way for this next generation of incredible light workers, healers, shamans, creatrixes, priestesses, whatever languaging we want to use. Um, it's pretty mind blowing. Sometimes I'm like, dang, I wish I could do that.
Yeah, well, what you said, it's interesting. You mentioned pave the path, because that's exactly what I was thinking right before you said it. Go figure, synchronicity. It's true. I mean, everything is a perfectly divinely orchestrated puzzle, right? It's like, there's a higher purpose to all of how everything is unfolded. And I believe that people such as ourselves, and I identify with a lot of what you're sharing. We have, had we not paved the path for some of that, then it may not have been as smooth of an entry, right, for those others, for the younger generations coming through. And yes, what you said is they have their own set of challenges and traumas and things, that they're adjusting to, being here on the earth plane as well. But everything serves a purpose. How everything is unfolded is happening in divine right time.
Yeah.
I also love that you bring up light language on the topic of more advanced healing technologies, because we are remembering right now a lot of those advanced healing technologies that we already have. Yeah, like none of this is new, right? Is what it's important for everybody to understand. It's ancient wisdom, it's ancient technology that, go ahead.
And it's our own DNA that has been dumbed down. It's funny, I was just having this conversation with someone today in regards to some of the things that's going on in the world today with 5G and some other things that we don't have to get into. But I don't know what your belief is about this, but my belief is that our original divine blueprint had 12 strands of DNA. We had access to all of the things that we are remembering now, right? Our higher intuition, our light language, our ability to bilocate or heal ourselves, just through our thought or our thinking or our vibration. I can't even imagine all of it, but we've been operating with 2 strands of DNA for hundreds of thousands of years. And I believe we literally are in the process of remembering now. We were talking before the show about this kind of death rebirth process that I feel like I just went through with fever and, just releasing everything that's not serving me anymore. One of my earlier spiritual teachers is a wonderful man named Jim Self from Mastering Alchemy. And he used to talk about us being in the spin cycle of the washing machine, where everything that is not essentially you as a sovereign spiritual being of light is getting spun off. Because it is not the truth of who you are. The truth of who you are is that being of light with the 12 strands of DNA who has access to all of our multidimensionality.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely believe that as well. And, that we all equally have the power of divine creatorship, right? We have unlimited electrons within us, that every day we're unlimited in what we choose to create. We're very powerful.
I love that. I remember one time reading, and I'm not going to get this right, but about the electrons and how they are literally like the connectors to so much else in the multiverse.
They do. I work with this a lot in manifesting and creation for myself and clients. But they're like these multidimensional gateways, because we all there are unlimited dimensions and spaces with which we all exist, right? And we get to choose to create whatever reality or space or time that it is that we want to be in. What happens with us in our human experience, right, is that I heard Mary Magdalene actually refer to this once as a veil of forgetfulness. Right? We forget how powerful we
come
are.
Down through the veil and forget.
And that we're already whole, right? And that's why I really just want to honor you for the work that you're doing, because trauma, I do believe, from my own personal experience and that with clients, is a huge component of what can keep us, right, from remembering that we're already whole and remembering how powerful we really are.
And it may not be necessary to make this distinction, but I'm just being called to make it anyway. And people may have heard this before, but the distinction between, when we say trauma, people tend to think of the big T trauma, right? Whether we've had some kind of real physical abuse, or maybe lost a loved one, or served in war and had that experience, right? That's what we used to think of as trauma, and it certainly is. But for a lot of people, the small t trauma of every day being silenced, or being told they didn't matter, or they were worthless, or the trauma of food insufficiency, or homelessness, or, well, the ACEs, right? The adverse childhood experiences, right? Having a parent who was incarcerated, or being raised in a single parent home, or, there are so many little insults to our sovereign beingness that over time can be just as damaging, sometimes even more so than maybe a single trauma. Not to take away again from any of those larger traumas.
Absolutely.
But we all have it. I grew up in a loving family, but my mother died the day I finished college, just before I got married. My father died just before my first child was born. Like, these things are traumatic. No, but it wasn't abuse. It wasn't trauma in the typical way.
No, I'm really glad that you bring that up, because there's so much truth in what you've shared with that. And again, that is, I could have a whole conversation about the matrix and like societal programming and all of that. But to say that we are conditioned to minimize our experiences, right? To muscle through life. And we're surrounded by a culture of minimizing and gaslighting, our experiences. And the truth is that, there is honestly, each one of us is on a unique path here and is having a unique experience here. And our feelings about whatever our experiences are all absolutely valid, right? And all absolutely important.
And just to bring this back to the conversation we're having a little earlier about oh my goodness, I just lost the context of it. Healing trauma, we can heal our individual trauma, and we also have to sit in the context of all of the collective trauma, whether it's trauma of religion, or trauma of our ancestry, escaping famine or slavery, or invasion by some, or racism, or so many collective experiences. When just thinking of women, the mother wound, the sister wound, the witch wound, all of the ways that the matriarchy was turned against itself. And I mean, I could go on and on about that, but it's not just our own, oh, this thing happened to me. There are all the ways in which our gifts are suppressed, our emotions are suppressed, our voices are suppressed because, oh, women were murdered when they did that shit. You put your hands on somebody and heal them, right? Or you spoke in light language, or you claim to have a direct connection to the divine and didn't go through the hierarchy of the church.
Yeah.
Those were killable offenses or threats, and women turned against each other to keep themselves safer, their families safe. There's so many ways. Anyway, I feel like I'm getting on a bit of a tangent, but there's just a lot of unrecognized trauma.
Absolutely. And as to go back to what we were talking about, right, is that, not to minimize that, right? Whatever that experience has been for you, those who are listening right now, right? To know not to minimize any of that. And so important to allow ourselves to acknowledge those feelings as they come forward so that we can allow them to move through our system and to heal them and to release them. And so many right now as well are remembering soul gifts as well that they're feeling called to bring forward, and that they don't see out in the world today, right? And that's because if you're here, you, me, and every single person who's going to be listening to this is someone who is being called to birth something that feels new to the current world, right? And it's actually a remembering and trusting that whatever that is, that you are meant to bring that forward.
Yeah, we didn't come to sit on the sidelines.
Nope. No,
we did not come to sit on the sidelines.
No, we didn't for sure. I'd love for you to share with us, because we do want to be in our spiritual leadership. We want to be empowered. And there are seasons of our path where it is wise for us to go within and to learn how to trust our own inner guidance. At the same time, I call it a dance, okay? But there is a time also to know when we can be open to receive support, because so many of us do have a tendency with that kind of patriarchal mentality of, just push through it, right? So what would be some signs that you can, right? I'm all there too, right? Like, what can be some signs? What are some signs that you can share that someone can look out for to discern when it's aligned for them to reach out for support?
Yeah. There's so much in what you just said, Jennifer, that, we could do 2 more shows on.
We could have, yeah, I know.
Yeah. When you hear yourself talking to yourself in the voice of judgment, you're such an asshole. Why did you do that? You never get it right. Why do you always screw things up? You're so stupid. You just ate another whole, thing of ice cream. Like, when you listen to the voice in your own head, if you have taken on the voice of that judgmental, critical, right, mean-spirited voice, that for me is a signal that you're out of balance, right? You've now become your own judge and jury, right? So it could be just listening to yourself and the things that you say to yourself. And if you know that I would never say that to a friend, or I would never call somebody else that name, but you're doing it to yourself, I would encourage you to reach out and to start to talk to somebody about that, because you've internalized that critical voice, that critical parent, that critical teacher or priest, or, you know, whoever it is. The other, I mean, so much of what I see day to day is just anxiety, right? Just not feeling safe in your body, being in a leaving pattern, noticing that you tend to go away or dissociate, or, you know, leave the room when the conversation gets uncomfortable or something is being talked about that, you know, so noticing your own patterns of fight or flight or anxiety, or um, how you're managing your own stress. Are we going to alcohol? Are we going to scrolling? Are we going to vaping? Are we going to some other kind of drugs? Are we going to um, sexual encounters that are not necessarily healthy, right? How are you distracting yourself from some pain by some kind of behavior? It could look healthy, like, hey, I walk 10 miles every day, or I go to the gym, or, you know, I do keto, or, but anything that you're doing excessively and obsessively, um, may in fact be a distractor from something else that you're not really wanting to feel. So, I mean, there's so much more I could say about that, but those are the things that, you know, pop up right away. If you're in an abusive relationship, in a narcissistic relationship, or I know there's so much, and I know our time is, you know, we
No,
are
those
in.
are all good. Those are all good signs, right? To watch out for. In closing, I would love for you to share with us anything else that you're just being guided to bring forward.
Ayana o katoshana hea katahna hea tatoshna katahia on the kia na ia tatashana kia tataha e tatakoshna ea na ma ia toho na hea kata ayana toho te kia shana ana ia kata ashana utoho ya kataha. And there's no, you know, there's no real translation of light language, because every sound could have a million meanings, right?
Yeah.
But what that felt like to me is something like, dear one, remember the truth of who you are. You are loved so dearly, and you are not broken. You are not your story. You are so much more than you know. And there is so much support for you here. So please open up and reach out and ask to feel us in your field, in your energy, even if you've never done this before. Begin to notice the little things, like the triple or quadruple digits, or when you think of someone and a text comes through and it's from them, or just notice those little synchronicities that are literally beginning to open you up to something beyond your current circumstances.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Very activating. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Catherine, if one final question, if someone who's listening is feeling guided to reach out to you, where is the best place for them to connect with you?
Probably the simplest thing is my website, which is sacredheartalchemy.com. It is outdated, but there is a contact form, and there's an opportunity for a free 20-minute consultation. There are also some free gifts on there, including, I think right now the one that's active is a sort of a purpose meditation. So people are certainly willing, you know, and able to, if they're willing, able to go there. I do have my regular Facebook is just my name, Catherine Ewing. I have a Facebook group that I have to say I have not been terribly active in recently, which is called Divinely Inspired Feminine Leaders. And then on Instagram, when I remember to go there, it's Sacred Heart Alchemy 144.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the website and a contact form there, or pop in and schedule through my online scheduling for a 20-minute consultation.
You also provided us with with which for those listening, we have links that will be in the show notes as well with your website, and it looks like your Instagram. And you also provided us with a link for a grounding meditation.
Oh, okay. Yes. So it is the grounding meditation. Yes.
Yeah. That will all be.
Those are great. I love them. They're two different meditations. One's about 10 minutes and one's about 20 minutes. So depending on how much time someone has, or what they're interested in, they can use one or the other.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Fantastic. Catherine, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being you. Thank you for shining your light in the world. Thank you for being a guest today. I am very grateful. Thank you.
So grateful to have come across your podcast and all the beautiful awareness and work that you're bringing out into the world. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.